Welcome to the Sports Saga podcast presented by Al Dias Electric. If you haven't already, subscribe to us, YouTube, Anchor, Spotify. We're now on Amazon Music. So if you're listening on Amazon Music, thank you very much. I'm Brady Kudo. My partner today is Tyler Clark, filling in for Keegan Hamlet. And our guest is the best-selling author of Bill Snyder, My Football Life and the Rest of the Story. He's covered Kansas State University for over 2 decades. His name is D. Scott FRITCHEN. D. Scott, welcome. Thanks for being here. And most importantly, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Brady. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it today.
Very happy to have you aboard. So let's dive right into it. We were just talking. You have, along with writing, you have a new role with Kansas State University Athletic Department. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, Brady, it'd be like working for the Patriots or the Red Sox. I work for the athletic department. It's an in-house position I'm really excited about. I get to write about 16 sports that K-State has. So every day is something new. I'm just writing a feature story right now on a young man named Josh Nikoloff, who started out his career at Columbia University. He's a baseball player in New York City, transferred to K-State, went through the whole COVID deal, had to replace or have surgery to 2 different hips. During that process, was out of baseball for an entire 2 years. So he's on recovery mode and coming back to K-State and doing really, really well for the Wildcats. So it's kind of like one of those really good feel-good stories that I really enjoy being able to tell.
Yeah, because you said both hip. That's not something, anybody takes lightly. So that's really cool. Now, you brought up baseball. I'm going to Tyler Clark, the former high school baseball player, at least. Trevor Story's a Red Sox. Tyler, your reaction?
Yep. Stunned, particularly because the Red Sox already have a shortstop. So not only did Trevor Story sign with a team who already has a position filled, he's literally willing to change positions to presumably second base, I would imagine, to compete with it. And we're looking at a Red Sox team that have possibly, now 3 of the top 10, if not maybe 15 infielders in the entire major leagues, all on the same roster, probably batting right in order. So with the exception of first base now in the Red Sox, you got Story probably second, Bogart's third, short, and Devers at third. I mean, you got quite a bit of infield going there for the Red Sox. But I know that story came in right before we got on, and I honestly can't believe it. I did not think that they would be signing him.
6 years, $140 million. That rounds out about 23 a year. And my hot take for the day is that this is the best middle infield in baseball. We can look at the Rangers with Seager and Simeon, and as good as Simeon is, granted, he is great, but you look at Corey Seager, he's good, but he's hurt
all the time.
A lot.
Yeah.
He is hurt a lot. And that's a factor, right? You have to factor that. Where does he hit 300, 290? No, he lives in more than, I believe it's that 260 range. So he's got power and he's great defensively, but Bogarts, who's a 5-tool, Story more or less is a 5-tool compared to Simeon, 5-tool, and Seager 4-tool, 3-tool. Right. I like that Red Sox middle infield a lot. But let's go right back to K-State. D. Scott, your new book, Bill Snyder, My Football Life and the Rest of the Story. Take us through the process of writing that book.
So when COVID hit, I had helped start a magazine back in 1998. And when COVID hit and there were no sports going on anywhere, if you're a sports writer, you need sports to write about. So because of that, I had to make a change. Coach Bill Snyder reached out to me and said, "Do you want to get some coffee?" So we got some coffee at a local shop. He asked me what I wanted to do next. I said, "Well, Coach, I'm kind of uncertain what my next step is going to be." And we were talking a little bit more. And I said, "Well, I could write the hell out of a Bill Snyder book." And, because I've basically known the man for almost 30 years. And so we talked about that a little bit, and I looked up Triumph Books out of Chicago. You don't need a literary agent like Simon & Schuster or some of those New York City publishing companies. So I reached out to Triumph Books. They're the #1 sports publishing company in the United States. I wrote them a proposal letter, and 48 hours later, I was on the phone with an editor, and he said, we're very interested in it. 48 hours after that, we were on a conference call with the CEOs. They said, we're really interested in it. They sent us out a contract, and we began the process. Basically, what it is those books are typically 70,000 to 90,000 words, and you usually have about 9 months to turn them around. When Coach and I got to the 2003 Big 12 championship season, we were at 97,000 words.
Wow.
So I called the editor back and said, hey, listen, this is what we got going on, and I need some more room. He said, well, we'll give you 150,000 words, but you need to turn it around in another month. So instead of doing 90,000 words in 9 months, we did 150,000 words in 7 months. So it was a really quick turnaround, but it was easy to do because, number one, I've known Coach, like I said, for almost 30 years. I've basically been covering K-State forever, been kind of an encyclopedia of sorts, kind of a historian of sorts, which I greatly appreciate and greatly enjoy. And I was just very, very grateful for the opportunity to be able to tell the story of the greatest turnaround in college football history by one of the greatest coaches in college football history, and be able to share that story, not only based upon football, but also just what Bill Snyder means to America and outside of college football, which are the 16 goals for Wildcat success, which different companies and organizations, Fortune 500 companies around the country use for their employees to teach them attributes such as teamwork and unity and those types of things. And also just what a genuine and sincere man he is, the handwritten notes that have become famous across the country in college football circles. He's probably written 1 million of those handwritten notes to people, just saying how much he appreciates them, writes them to coaches after games, writes them to players after games. So just all the essence of what the man is about and what he represents, and how lucky K-State is that they were able to get him at the time, because K-State was on the verge of losing their football program.
Your parents went to K-State.
Yes.
Tyler's didn't, mine didn't. What did it mean, like, for you to cover a school that means so much to your family?
Yeah, well, my grandparents, my parents grew up in Council Grove, Kansas, which is about 40 miles from Manhattan. And my grandparents bought us tickets to the K-State KU football game, October 12th, 1991. At the time, Dad was stationed at the Pentagon. He was in the Navy for 23 years. We were stationed at the Pentagon at the time in Washington, D.C. We flew down here for the game, and that I attended my first K-State football game that day. And I've been wanting to be a sports writer since I was age 10. I grew up with the Washington Post and reading all those award-winning stories by award-winning writers. So I knew sports writing was what I was going to do at a very young age, which I'm grateful for. We went to the K-State game, and at the time, K-State was the third year under Bill Snyder. K-State came back to win 16-12 in that game. In the final minutes of the game, they were able to win the game. The goalpost came down. I saw Coach kind of being enthusiastic on the sidelines, and I thought to myself, I'm going to write stories about that man someday. Wow. I was 15 years old at the time. And so 3 years later, I came to K-State and began with the student newspaper, the Kansas State Collegian. And from there, went to the Kansas City Star for 4 years. I helped cover K-State for the Kansas City Star. And then, as I said, started this magazine in 1998 and been doing freelance stories for Athon, a variety of different magazines over that span as well. So I was heavily dedicated to, I was eating and breathing K-State basically and working these absurd hours. But since Coach works about 20 hours a week, a day, I wanted to make sure that I was kind of keeping pace with him. So a lot of coffee, a lot of work, but been able to meet so many great people over the years. And you know, you talk about what it means. It's pretty much my life, and I felt like it was kind of my calling. You know, you have that thing called your why. Why do you do something? And that's my why. I think that's my why in life, is to be able to tell the stories of Kansas State. And it's a rabid fan base. It's a very loyal fan base, and it's a college town. It's voted the #1 college town in America, matter of fact, Manhattan, Kansas. And it's a really tight group of people. So it means a lot to me to be able to serve these people and to be able to tell the stories of K-State throughout the country.
So I actually had a lead in for that. I know
Yeah.
you mostly specialize in football, but 2018 NCAA tournament, Kansas State makes a run to the Elite Eight as a 9 seed. I'm sure you remember this. They got the only time in the history of the tournament that they played a 16 seed in the second round when they got UMBC, who just upset Virginia the round before. I'm just curious, what was that like being in an atmosphere where a team who no one really expected to do much of anything is suddenly running to the Elite Eight and kind of surprising everyone in the country?
It's magical, man. It's magical. There's nothing like it. Those underdog stories are, you know, just incredible. It'd be like K-State in 1989 or 1990 when they weren't supposed to be that good, being able to upset Oklahoma or #1 Nebraska at the time or something like that. You get on a run in March, and it's really incredible to see. And I think we're seeing parity more and more than ever before. St. Peter's, watching them, what they were able to do with Murray.
I was just going to bring that up when you were making that point.
And then in 2018, Kansas State ended up getting into the Elite Eight only to run into a team with an even more unlikely story, which was Loyola Chicago, who ended up, so Kansas State as a 9 seed ends up being the home team in the Elite Eight game. Had they not run into the buzzsaw that was Loyola Chicago that year, they probably could have kept going. And if you look back, I'm sure you know this, in 2010, they did almost something similar where they went all the way to the Elite Eight in 2010 as well, but they were actually really good that year to run into Butler in the Elite Eight that year, who ends up advancing. So that's been 2 tournaments, I'm sure, that it's been fun to be a part of, because a lot of outside of like major, like Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, you know, these college basketball teams get one good run in them every 10 years or so. So to be part of 2 of them in that 10-year span, I'm sure was great for the fans in Manhattan.
Yeah. And what was really cool about that at the time was Bob Huggins coming into K-State and revitalizing that program in 2007. And then he passed the torch to Frank Martin, who was unknown. He was the associate head coach for K-State at the time. Funny story about Frank, you know, John probably told you I'm from Orlando, just like John is. That's how we became best friends when we were 15 years old.
See, he didn't tell me that you were from Orlando, because I actually, John coached baseball for me for quite a few years. John did not tell me that. I just know that you're the 1993 Sports Writer of the Year in Florida.
Well, yeah, we grew up in Orlando, but the funny story with Frank is the first book I wrote called Teamwork. It was about our 1992 state championship basketball team. We beat Miami Senior High School for the title. Miami Senior is the powerhouse in the state of Florida, one of the best programs in the entire country at the time. And we beat them. It was one of the greatest upsets in Florida State Championship history. So I met Frank for the first time at Brownridge Coliseum at K-State. And I went up to him and I said, Miami Senior Oviedo, 1992. He said, "Oh my gosh, you were there?" I said, "Yeah, I wrote for the student newspaper at the time." And so that's how we made our connection.
No kidding.
And we're sitting at the 2008 NCAA tournament game practice. K-State was going to play OJ Mayo and USC, and we're sitting there at shoot around. And Frank looks at me, he says, "Hey, D. Scott, this is a hell of a lot more different than Oviedo against Miami Senior, isn't it?" So that's how we made that connection. And yeah, that 2010 team was magical. You know, you had Jacob Poland just lighting them up, and you know they were going against Jim Fredette, who was the #1 top scorer in the country that year, and just a tremendous game. The double overtime game against Xavier had to be one of the best NCAA tournament games that I've ever seen.
I'm rooting for Frank Martin. I mean, I unfortunately just lost a job with South Carolina. I'm rooting for him. I think he's gonna get back into it. I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him, man. I am. Let's go more. Let's take away from the book. Let's continue on this sports covering. Do you have a favorite interview?
A favorite interview? Man, I've had so many. It's kind of hard to say. If there's someone I'm going to call on the phone because I need to talk to them for a story, it's Michael Bishop. Remember
John
Michael
mentioned you
Bishop?
were friends with him.
Yeah, Michael Bishop. You might remember Tom Brady in 2004 said he had the strongest arm that he'd ever seen.
Yeah.
I think he told the Boston Globe that at a training camp. But Michael Bishop, Heisman runner-up, 1998, and you know, he was the first Davey O'Brien Award winner that had 1,500 passing yards and 500 rushing yards in a game. And after Michael left, 6 of the next 13 passers in college football that earned the Davey O'Brien Award were dual threat quarterbacks. Michael kind of started that. He's very knowledgeable. He's a high school coach in Texas, the state of Texas right now, just won a state title in his first season as head coach. But he's very, very knowledgeable on Kansas State and is still such a figurehead here in Manhattan that anytime I need something, I give MB a call and we figure it out.
That's awesome. Now let's continue with football. One last, at least for me, it's one last question for you. Obviously, we know the legend that is Bill Snyder. He has a stadium named after him, right? He's one of the best coaches to ever do it. Who would you say is his best assistant, like the best, like when you look at the Bill Snyder coaching tree, who's the most successful coach?
Oh, Bob Stoops,
Yeah.
easily. Yeah. So that was interesting. Bobby was a safety at the University of Iowa. And when Coach came to K-State, he brought him along. He'd have been a graduate assistant at Iowa at the time, and he brought him along on staff. And, you know, he was able to flourish, defensive secondary coach, and of course, then turned into a defense coordinator. And K-State had some of the best defenses in the entire country. They were #1 in total defense in 1995. And then Bob leaves and goes to Florida, and then the rest is history, because of course he goes to Oklahoma after that. But yeah, coach has such a footprint as far as the coaching tree, probably one of the best coaching trees in college football history, but definitely I would put Bob Stoops up there at the top.
Tyler, are we clean sweeping? Do you say Bob Stoops?
My history of my knowledge of the entire lineage of Kansas State assistant coaches is not my strong suit, but Bob Stoops is famous, so I'm sure I'll go with Bob Stoops.
I was looking at this the other day. I'm like, oh, Bob Stoops. Oh, Bob Stoops. I forget. There's a couple other names. I was like, but Bob Stoops won championships. A lot of these other guys didn't.
Yeah.
That was my thought.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of another more well-known coach in college football than I mean, And when you think of like the top 10 of famous college football coaches, you would say Bob Stoops is definitely going to be up there.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Here's a little known fact. Rex Ryan was defense coordinator at K-State for 1 week. He was here for 1 week and then left for a job. But he was here over the summer.
Really?
After 1998, yeah.
That's interesting.
So he'd be up there too, except that he never actually was a part of a game.
Was that the undefeated season, 98?
Yeah, 98, yeah.
You're right. I know one of the years that you didn't end up getting into because that was the time where there was no college football playoff. Obviously, it was the
BCS.
top 2 teams only made it, and that was it. But I know there was one, that was a defeated year.
Oh, 98?
Yeah.
The 98 year, they were undefeated in the regular season, and then they lost to Texas A&M in double overtime. Otherwise, they would have gotten a national championship game. That's probably what you were.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
Well, that does conclude our episode of the Sports Saga podcast. Thank you, D. Scott, again. Thank you, Tyler, for filling in. Next weekend, again, we're based in Southeastern Massachusetts. We have a graduate of Somerset Berkeley Regional High School and the head men's basketball coach of Virginia Wesleyan University, Dave Macedo, joins us. Dave's a national championship winning coach down in Virginia. So again, wherever you're listening, drop a like on this, subscribe to us, share us, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Our links to that are in the description below. So again, for D. Scott FRITCHEN and Tyler Clark, I am Brady Kuno. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.